Thank you very much. Next slide, please. As you see on the slide, I like to just say we really do need everybody. We value our personnel and all of those who contribute to the success of our mission. Next slide. NSF is committed to building opportunity. This commitment is so prevalent with our director, Dr. Panchanathan. Punch hit the ground day one, leading all aspects of our agency in a matter where diversity is not just a core value on paper, but it is foundational discussion included in all of our business endeavors. When he speaks of doing business at speed and scale, and about the many collaborative partnerships we at NSF will need to establish, he instills in us the fact that the key ingredient to ensuring the success of each of them is not only valuing diversity, but being inclusive in a manner that all can bring their best efforts to take on the complex challenges and opportunities of today. He is incredibly supportive of the work we do in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Shortly after confirmation as NSF's director, he established a racial equity task force. His vision is one which discrimination and bias have no place at NSF, in the research community, or any corner of science and engineering. Punch also sees harassment as being a barrier to full participation and is further enhancing our ability to address harassment associated with NSF-funded research. NSF's harassment efforts have significantly evolved since the initial 2018 harassment policy. Since 2018, a team has met weekly on this topic to include creating new modifications, new terms, new procedures, and new plan strategies. Punch also established an equity team that works in concert with other federal agencies on assessing equity initiatives in a corporate manner for all. Next slide, please. ODI, the Office of Diversity Inclusion's mission, the office that I work in, is to ensure NSF's compliance with federal EEO and civil rights laws and regulations. We do that through compliance, complaint processing, policy development, workforce analysis, outreach, and education. Our work supports NSF's strategic plan by providing equal employment opportunities to all employees and applicants in all personnel employment programs and management practices and decisions. Next slide. Examples of our work include Title IX compliance reviews, complaint investigations, both EEO and external civil rights complaints, reasonable accommodations for employees, applicants, and NSF visitors. Next slide. Our approach is in three categories to addressing equity at NSF. We first have a corporate-wide strategy. We conducted an inventory of NSF initiatives with equity components to look at the efforts that would involve, processes, engagement activities, and stakeholders involved to see what we could learn and leverage across the initiatives. Second, we're examining policies and practice for potential barriers. And third, we will make recommendations for strategies to mitigate and remove any identified barriers during the implementation phase. Next slide. Science changes the world. It really does. And NSF promotes diversity and an inclusion in the scientific research enterprise from our large facilities partners to our awardees across the country, to the vibrant US science and educational communities. Our reach is extensive and impactful. As an institution with such reach and impact, we have a responsibility to continually examine how we carry out our mission. I would like to highlight today three areas: our Racial Equity Task Force, harassment efforts, and equity initiatives. Next slide. First, our Racial Equity Task Force charge is to examine the potential for racial barriers and make recommendations regarding how NSF can be a leader in meaningfully addressing them with the goal of extinguishing them. We had to ask ourselves the hard questions about whether we are fully developing all of the talent and potential within NSF and our community at large. We must also identify what aspects of how we do business might present potential barriers to full participation and equitable access. It is important that I share what the task force isn't about. It isn't about increasing the number of program recipients or employees, nor is it increasing the amount of targeted funds. While the agency has several efforts that focus on those areas, it's important to get a better understanding of how we could complement those efforts by focusing on barrier analysis. Next slide. The task force is comprised of working groups. The first working group is the employment working group, who are reviewing organization reporting structure, hiring practices, position management, and policies and procedures. The program working group, they're reviewing grant and proposal writing and development, NSF's merit review process, R1 and MSI partnerships and collaborations, and policies and procedures applicable to program delivery. At a minimum, they must review these areas, but can look at a broader array of areas. Next slide. Activities. Both working groups will review the policies and practices applicable to both of the areas internally and externally focused to determine if there are potential barriers that may hinder racial equity for employees, applicants, and program participants. They will make recommendations for fast-track sustainable initiatives with measurable outcomes to improve racial equity. We understand that we did not get here overnight. So we will not have recommendations at the conclusion of this phase of the task force work that will correct overnight. But we do expect to immediately implement low-hanging fruit initiatives and develop pathways to address more complex matters. The task force is comprised of members representing a diverse demographic population to include job categories and varying tenure times at the agency. It is very important that the representation of the membership reflect the lens of the various VIPs who work for us, and everyone is a VIP. We have an executive steering committee that includes the president of our union, Local 3403. We have resource group members and executive secretaries. Next slide. I would like to now focus on our harassment policies and give you an overview, along with background and ongoing efforts. As I said earlier, in early 2018, NSF set out to increase its efforts to create a safe research experience at educational institutions and anywhere federally funded research was done. We had no idea if a PI or co-PI funded by NSF had been involved in sexual harassment or not. So we drafted a term and condition for reporting sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, or sexual assault. We had numerous roundtables with other federal agencies, awardee institutions, general counsels, Office of Sponsors Research. As we learned from the National Academies of Science.
You're muted, Rhonda.
I'm not sure how I got muted.
Yeah, it was just a couple of sentences, I think.
Yeah. So as I said, we had no idea if a PI or co-PI funded by NSF had been involved in sexual harassment or not. So we drafted a term and condition for reporting sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, or sexual assault. We had numerous roundtables with other federal agencies, awardee institutions, general counsels, offices of sponsored research. We learned from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine that it was important to include other protected bases such as race. We incorporated feedback received as a PLIPA and submitted the policy into the Federal Register notice process. We received nearly 200 comments. Approximately 50% of comments stated we went too far, and the other 50% stated we didn't go far enough. We think we landed somewhere in the middle. We call it a sweet spot, and probably didn't make either side totally happy. The new term and condition became effective October 22nd, 2018, and was not retroactive. Now awardee organizational representatives must notify us if an NSF-funded PI or co-PI either has a finding or determination that he or she committed harassment, placed on administrative leave, or finding or final determination. By the way, we expect all personnel on the grant to adhere to all civil rights policies. It's just no notification are required to notify NSF. Next slide, please. Continue what we consider with the harassment term and condition when we get a notification in is the safety and security of the personnel supported by the NSF award, the overall impact to the NSF funded activity, the continued advancement of taxpayer funded investments in science and scientists, and whether the awardee has taken appropriate actions to ensure the continuity of science and continued progress in the current award. Next slide. Additional harassment policies we have put in place since the original harassment term and condition. We research experiences for undergraduates, the REU program, we have a term and condition, NSF's postdoctoral fellowship awards, SBIR awards, we have term and condition, and conference policies, which will be in the 2020 PAPG. Also travel funding proposals, which will come up in the latest PAPG. And we have a term and condition FAQ sheet that we recently updated to keep as we learn of different things that we think will be very important to share with the community. We have included in that FAQ. Next slide. NSF equity initiatives. We have several initiatives to view equity in a corporate enterprise way for everyone. The director established a NSF equity team, and this team is working with other federal agencies. It is addressing one of the 4 pillars of the administration. We also have ongoing equity initiatives. We have stakeholder engagement, both internal and external, to include pulse surveys, focus groups, meetings. We took an inventory of NSF initiatives with the equity components to look at those efforts, as I mentioned earlier, their processes, engagement activities, and stakeholders, so we can leverage them across the enterprise. We are also establishing central portals, what I'll call one-stop diversity tool shopping concept. Next slide. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you today some of the things we're doing along the lines of equity. Susie?
Thank you, Rhonda. That was great. So I think that we're open for questions, right, Loretta?
Yes, we're open for questions.
And are people putting them in chat or raising their hands? How's that going to work?
I think they can put them in chat. We have a large group and we might miss some of the hands. They could try raising hands. I see one question. Is the EPSCoR theory of action located online? It will be. As a part of our visioning activity, we'll have lots of resources that will be available to you. So be sure to sign up at the link, and my presentation will be posted. Is that right, Tisha? And you can click on the link and go ahead and maybe we'll put that, maybe Tim, maybe you'll put that link in the chat box so people can go ahead and make their interest known, and we'll be able to share materials through that activity.
And Loretta, I note that Clemencia Cosentino will be talking to the group later in the week. Is that right?
Yes.
So if they have any questions about that, then they could, those would be good questions posed for her, because she's the leader of our evaluation and assessment capability here at NSF. And she and her team are the ones that have been working on this.
Yes. So I see Tim has posted the link to the future of NSF EPSCoR. And one of the things we're going to ask you to do is to, and we'll communicate with you through Liz, is to ask you to upload your accomplishments and the impact that EPSCoR has had on your jurisdiction, on your projects, on your career through that same website. And so you'll hear more about that on Thursday, I believe.
And Loretta, I see that there's a question for Rhonda.
Okay.
So Ms. Davis, thank you for the presentation and the important work. Can you speak to how you would anticipate how the work of your commission will reach EPSCoR programs? Whoops, and now I just lost it. Somebody put something else in here.
It says, Ms. Davis, thank you for your presentation and important work. Can you speak to how you would anticipate how the work of your commission will reach EPSCoR programs? What should be on the lookout? What should we be on the lookout for?
That's the good question. We are actually, when I said we're looking across the whole enterprise and we're working with OIA, and the theory of change model that she talked about is one that we are incorporating into our equity initiative. So it will not be anything that we're doing at NSF that should not have an equity lens that doesn't tie directly to the work of our equity team. The racial equity task force, they started out before 6 months before the equity team. So we're able to leverage some of the things that we'll be learning from the racial equity task force, but we also are able to leverage across the enterprise and from other federal agencies. So we'll be working very closely with EPSCoR as we go through the process with our equity work. And Susie, I don't know if you have more to elaborate.
Well, I think that there's going to be important messages that come out of this. All of this work that you're doing and the reporting that you're going to be doing that will have implications, most definitely for EPSCoR and for broadening participation, ensuring racial equity, across the EPSCoR jurisdictions also. And I think that that your work is not completed yet, right, Rhonda? You still have
That's
a way
correct.
to go. And so I think that we need to wait to see, what comes out of this, and then what exactly would be, important for EPSCoR. But I'm sure that we're going to be taking a hard look at that when the time comes, and reporting back to you folks, to the EPSCoR community.
Monique, can you speak to when the recordings will be available online?
Post meeting, so typically about a week after the conference is over, we'll have all of the recordings. After the conference, and as the conference is going, we will be posting the presentations as we receive them to the meeting website. So you'll be able to find any presentations and handouts there. But approximately 7 to 10 business days, if not sooner, we'll have the recordings posted to the website.
Thank you.
And I do see another question in the chat.
Yeah, I just saw where someone is asking about HBCUs. So as I stated in my presentation, the broadening participation initiatives and everything that's going on in the programs as it relates to EPSCoR and other programs are continuing. The equity work that we are doing under the Racial Equity Task Force is focused on barriers. How can we look at barriers, which will include HBCUs, barriers to full participation, looking at R1 MSI HBCU relationships and what can we do there. So we do expect something to be coming out soon in our report from the Racial Equity Task Force. The reports from the Equity Task Force we're started a little bit further behind the Racial Equity Task Force, so it will be a while before we get there. But in those reports, we will see some efforts that do include broadening participation, and it's not just barrier focused, whereas the Racial Equity Task Force right now is barrier focused, but that doesn't mean the efforts that Susie and Loretta and all others are doing around broadening participation are not ongoing.
Right, and I'll just add to that. Thanks, Rhonda. That was great. So, in terms of our response to the COVID impacts on all institutions and individuals across the country, we are going to be focusing on the funding that we'll be getting from the CARES Act to mitigate some of those impacts. We're going to be focusing most of that funding on individuals and institutions, like all MSIs, including HBCUs, to make sure that we are not allowing for this time period when we've been suffering from loss of lab time, loss of time in the field, right? That we're going to really be helping HBCUs and all MSIs to really recoup, what's been lost and make sure that that there's special attention and special funding for that. So I think you're going to see that in the future. I can't comment specifically on what it is at this point, but you'll be seeing some really great activities that EPSCoR is going to be involved with, focused on MSIs in the near future.
I think we had a question from Edwin. Thank you, Edwin, for that question about, it is somewhere here, about sessions on best practice. Besides sessions on best practicing, is EPSCoR planning on grant writing workshops in the future? As you might know, that EPSCoR has a workshop solicitation. So if that is something that you feel would benefit a community or a region, let us talk. We'd be delighted to receive that information. And as well, there are many other opportunities. And so as a part of our visioning activity, please sign up, please participate, because it's our goal to understand what your needs are. If there are more grant writing workshops, we will see how we can go about hosting these. So thank you, Edwin. Okay, so a reminder for me, I was going to do the shout out on later this week, but really want to shout out to our Track 2 teams and our Track 4 teams for all of their efforts to support HBCUs. Our Track 2, I hope everyone has seen the new DCL that we have out to create partnerships between Track 2 and MSIs. And JD, if you want to jump in, feel free to jump in and say something. As well, Track 4 launched a new initiative with NASA, and you'll hear from NASA later this week. And it's called the Track 4 FAST, where we are facilitating building those partnerships between our communities, MSIs, and national labs. And we started with NASA, so very exciting. You'll hear more about this later this week. And we have probably have our NASA individuals in the room, Jeffy. So if you're out there, feel free to say something. Chi-Chi, if you want to add anything.
So let me just say, I hope that JD and or Chi-Chi will pipe up, because that's what I was exactly talking about, was this DCL, and I forgot that it had already been posted. So I'm really, really excited for this great opportunity. And so that's exactly what I was talking about. So JD, please tell everybody about this great opportunity.
JD, I think you're going to have to show your face.
I'm right here. How about that? No, I'm very, very excited about this opportunity. It's posted under NSF 21078. So if you ask Google, it will pop you straight to that. We've also in a period of reaching out. What it does, it provides two opportunities to current RI Track 2 projects. One of them is to basically be able to hire a postdoc from an MSI and bring them into your network. The other is actually for you to be able to send a recent graduate student out to an MSI. So that's the postdoc piece of it. The second piece is allowing MSIs to directly partner with your current Track 2 project. So we've had 2 webinars so far already. I'm happy to run a third if there's a requirement for that. We're also setting up ways to make connections between both you and MSIs. So what we've done so far is I've sort of reached out to you, starting to have you expand out into your networks. We're compiling lists, and we're in the process of reaching out through all of the magical ways within NSF to be able to reach out to MSIs. And what we're hoping to do is we're organizing almost a matching event coming up in the near future. So watch this space. If anyone has any questions about it, please, email me, get in contact with me. That's no problem at all. I'll also be talking a little bit about it on Friday, and also feel free to come to my office hour, on Friday as well for that.
Dr. Whitley, can we highlight you and you come on screen?
I'm right here. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to put a gentle shout out because we just had a deadline close for the EPSCoR Research Fellows track for opportunities for early career faculty and investigators at non-academic institutions. And the opportunity is that there's a brand new track within Track 4 entitled RAI Track 4 Fast. And this opportunity gives non-tenured investigators from select institutions the opportunity to conduct research and strengthen their collaborations at NASA research centers. And so we just kicked off the first pilot this year, and we'll have a second iteration where more research centers will hopefully be involved. It is a partnership between NSF and NASA, and in addition to the traditional budget request of up to $300,000, PIs, once receiving an award, can also request an additional research infrastructure development award to build capacity at their home institutions. The select institutions include minority serving institutions, including HBCUs, as well as women's colleges, primarily undergraduate institutions, institutions primarily serving individuals with disabilities, and community colleges. If there's anything that I missed, come on to our Track 4 tips and best practices session where you'll hear more from individuals who've participated in Track 4 in general and from a NASA point of contact, or you can reach out to me for a one-on-one towards the end of the week. But thank you.